Hi all. So first off, you may hear some rain ambiance, some evening ambiance. As we get into this, it's about 7:30 here, and we're in the rainy season, so it's been really nice and calm. But today, I wanted to talk about dating versus courtship. And let's just get right into it. So the reason I ended up deciding to do this talk was because I realized that a lot of people didn't know the difference between the two. And that's secondary to the fact that I noticed that a lot of people who are in the dating process, who are going on first, second, third dates, who are trying to find a partner, and talking about that on social media, hate it. So, something that I notice with people, generally allistic people, is that they will do something even though they hate it, and they won't notice that they hate it. Or they maybe just have a really difficult time seeing beyond the thing that they hate. So they persist in the thing that they hate because they just don't think that there's another option or something. I'm not going to try to get too far into it. So a lot of people, the majority of people, it seems, are, on dating apps or whatever, and they're out here going on dates. And I started to notice that it it seemed to be kind of difficult, traumatizing, demoralizing, exhausting, and sometimes downright dangerous in a way that its cumulative effect on a person was that over time they began to doubt more and more that they would ever be able to find the partner that they were looking for. So there's a few things about this that I want to get into today. But yeah, so I just noticed that like so many people were talking about how hard the dating pool is right now, how bad it's looking. And like a lot of these people are women, and there's a very real factor in like grieving how few appropriate male partners there are for the women who are looking for male partners. But it's definitely not limited to women looking for men, and it's definitely not even limited to heterosexual couples. So it just seems like everybody out here is just having, they're fighting for their lives. Let me be real. They're fighting for their lives trying to find a partner. And so I have to kind of think about how I want to frame this. So before I get too deep into it, I want to say, if you're curious, I have a previous talk that I did, and it's just kind of tangentially related via relationships, but why I don't follow or get into the twin flame model of thinking about relationships spiritually. And I've also talked about, and I don't know if I have a talk on this. I have a series of posts on Instagram, and I may do a talk. If anybody is interested, leave a comment below. But I did a talk about why polyamory isn't like the relationship ideal that a lot of people are pushing that it is. I'm not against it in any way, just against the idea that it's like the best, only good option. But I'm just kind of putting that out there for anybody who's curious. And if you'd like to hear more, like I said, just leave a comment and I'll get into it. So let's go a little deeper on this whole dating thing. One of the main things that I want to say as we move forward, there's two key points. One, that the dating pool, let's say there's the dating pool, and in the dating pool there are the dating swimmers. Not everybody is there for the same reason. And that's one of the biggest problems. And the solution to that, one of the solutions to that is courtship, which I'm going to explain further. And the other thing is that dating is not an inherent norm. It has become way more popular in the past century, and it is way more popular in some countries, Western countries, than others. And in certain ways, that's neither good nor bad. I'm not saying that we need to not ever date or we need to have whatever traditions are in other countries. However, I will say that there is something that we lost many times when assimilated into Western structure or into Western culture and lost our courtship customs. So now we're getting into courtship. There's kind of two main ways you can speak about it. The general rule is that courtship is a series of intentional actions that are pursued by people who are mutually seeking a partner or partners. And I want to say, if you're poly, all the stuff that I'm about to say still applies, but it may be less relevant to a lot of people who are poly because some of their philosophies for what they're trying to get out of a relationship or the structures that they want in a relationship may not apply. And I totally understand that. So this is for people who are dating because they are looking for a committed partnership, a long-term committed partnership, aka a marriage. That's the kind of thing that you're looking for. You're looking for somebody who's devoted to your relationship, to you, to what you're working with together. And yeah, that's what you're looking for. And you're looking for somebody who is mature enough. You're looking for somebody who's ready enough, who is very sincerely pursuing that and mutually. So that would have been courtship. In many of our cultures, we have courtship processes, and they range wildly from, how much rigor goes into the process, how long the process is. Sometimes it could be up to a year, maybe even more. How many family members are involved. Sometimes family members are used to vet the possible suitor, whether there are dowries or services or gifts and all of this kind of stuff. And that's going to vary culture to culture and, century to century. But generally, this was, like I said, some sort of mutual process. And it was like a vetting process. And it has to be a long process because you have to see if this person is willing to stick around. So the first thing I want to say is that, well, let's actually go back a little. Let's define dating. So the problem, remember I was saying that the dating pool has its dating swimmers, right? And not everybody is there for the same thing. This is the key problem that people are experiencing with dating, okay? Because like I said at the beginning, the people who are complaining, they're complaining because they are dating to find a suitable partner for a committed long-term relationship. A lot of them are looking towards marriage. And there are people in the dating pool who are dating just to date. Again, this is not going to be about moralizing what's right or wrong. I'm not interested in that whatsoever. Everybody's doing what's right for them. But there are literally people who date for the experiences. There are also people who date, especially men, who date because it is a slightly more safe, slightly more morally acceptable process of seeking sexual partners. So this is where we're going to segue into the history of dating. Why do we think dating is how you get a partner? First, before I go there, I want to state that it is a huge assumption that in order to find a long-term committed partnership, you need to date. In our culture, it is a default assumption. When in the media, whether this is news, magazines, movies, books, TV, whatever it is, when you hear people saying that they want a partner, what is the response? Oh, well, you have to date. Or you'll hear them say, I'm going on dates. I'm dating somebody I'm going to go on a dating app. We've got all this stuff and it's about dating, okay? But that's an assumption that that's how you find a partner. And so I know that from other cultures, when people say that they don't date or they're not allowed to or whatever it is, one of the most common responses from westernized people is, but then how do you find a partner? So there is this assumption that there is one default way to find a partner, and it's by dating. Very interestingly, there's a social scientist who was a woman, and this is important because she had a completely different perspective. She was asking questions that none of the other men in her field were asking. I think this happened maybe 2 years ago, around then. I'm not entirely sure, but I can find the study, and so I will link it below. But she asked, is that actually how relationships are starting? Or is there another way? And she did a series of studies, and she found that over 60 to 65% of long-term committed partnerships of marriages actually started as friendships. These people did not date. They knew each other already. And then their friendship started to deepen at some point where they decided, hey, let's be partners, right? Or things just became romantic after the friendship was established. This is another key factor. A real long-term marriage, and I'm going to use the word marriage in its generalist sense, A long-term marriage, a good marriage, is a partnership of friends. Friendship is the foundation for non-familial love. You have friends, and then you have super intimate special friends, okay? But they have to all be your friends. And this is why there are people who date or they say, oh, we were roommates and we were friends, and then things go deeper. But it's also why when you see people who end up successfully in a loving marriage, a partnership like that, they'll very frequently say, it's like I'm marrying my best friend, right? They need to love each other in that friendly way first. And this is also a problem of the way that we center romanticize romance as this big passionate thing. Because if you have that sort of chemistry-based attraction and passion without the friendship, that chemistry-based passion is actually a short-lived flame. And it's the friendship that would provide the long-term kindling. And when two people are not actually friends beneath that superficial, like, ooh, we're partners, you're the yin to my, you know what I mean? Like, you're my sunshine, you're my sunset, you're my, oh, he bought me a bouquet of 3 dozen roses. When that is not happening and those people are not actually friends, the reality of living together becomes unsustainable because you really need to be friends with somebody that you are cohabiting with.
The reason dating is pissing so many people off, the reason it's disappointing people, the reason it's leading to all this heartbreak is, aside from the point that I made about the different people at the pool, the fact that dating is set up for you to start role-playing a fully committed relationship before you've become friends. And when in this relationship where you've decided, and I say role play because it's not fully real until you have the foundation of friendship, but when in this role play relationship of dating, it comes time for this person to show you some real care, some real intention, some real thought, some real tenderness, and you don't get it, and it hurts. Because you are putting things into the relationship that should have come from a full cup of friendship and trust and intimacy and care before you started doing all that other stuff. And so when it comes time for those things to actually show up like they would in a real relationship, that foundation is not there. And you find yourself giving and not receiving, or giving from a place of, I don't have enough, but I'm going to extend this into the relationship to show them that that's my intention in hopes that they reciprocate. Either way, you've come from a place where you don't actually have what you need, because what you needed was friendship. You need to be friends with people before you date them. You need to be friends with people before you date them. But the way dating is set up is that you just come straight out the gate with the intent to see how quickly you can move towards this goal of being in a relationship, whether that means sex, because there are some people who are just using it for like, I want to know you enough so that I feel safe having sex with you. And then there are people who are like, no, I want a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a partner, right? And so what they're trying to do is see within several dates if you can get to that point. But as you may know, there's no way to force a friendship. There's no way to force any of it. I mean, listen, I am not one of those people who, I support princess treatment. I support the masculines giving the feminines everything and the moon because of the way things are set up, and I just believe in that, right? But I don't believe in dating for money. I don't. And I'm not going to say that it's wrong if you do, but I'm going to say that that's not where I'm not going to support that, because I think that dating for money is also a form of scarcity mindset. And it is a scarcity of love, that you believe that you won't be able to find a loving partner. So what you'll settle for is a partner who pays you a lot of money, and that'll be enough to make you happy. And we'll see about that. But anyway, So what I'm saying is, when you date this way, then you rush towards doing the things that would exist in the relationship because that relationship is your goal. So you start making out, you're having sex, or you're giving gifts, like, more serious gifts or serious forms of financial payment or support or, whatever. But then somebody gets sick, or somebody's depressed, or it was time to remember somebody's birthday, or all that kind of stuff. And that doesn't happen, right? That's where we start to feel betrayed. That's where we start to feel let down. And it's because, like I said, we gave into the relationship something that should have only come as a result, an after effect of the friendship. So what we're really hurt by when that person doesn't show up for us, or when something is not reciprocated, is like, oh, you're not my friend. You don't care for me like I care for you. It's not about whether you love them or not, because there are so many different kinds of love. What I'm saying is, because friendship is a kind of love, and it's the love that is the foundation of all more deep, intimate relationships that are not family, what you're sad about is that they're not your friend. And this is also what's so hurtful about people who say that they're, I almost think this is also something that people are fundamentally more afraid of. And this is why people struggle with intimacy, because they don't want the risk of this gigantic heartbreak. But because they don't want to risk this gigantic form of heartbreak, they don't get to risk winning. And what they want to avoid, because I've heard people talk about this, they said, almost like something that comes up in queer relationships more often, because a lot of queer relationships are more skewed towards being friends first and then you get intimate. And I think that sometimes they can lack certain boundaries, but whatever. And so they say what happens is, when you break up, you didn't just lose somebody that you were dating, you lost a friend. And that hurts so much more. Or when there's betrayal, right? It's like, wow, we weren't just dating, we were friends, and you did this to me, and that hurts. So that's where I'm going with this.
So, like I said, the scientists realized that over 60 to 65, and I say that because I can't remember the exact number of marriages started as friendships. Now let's get back into that cultural history point. This is actually the big thing that I know that makes it so shocking to me when I observe people, I'm dating, I'm going on another date. And, there's even like kind of reels and TikToks about people preparing to go on dates, but they already have this kind of jaded, bitter, sardonic attitude about it. Like, oh, this is going to suck. They already know it's going to suck. And I've seen, like I said, a lot of people who are just so, I don't even know if there's a point anymore. So I'm going to get to that. But anyway, let's talk about war. Like I said, dating was not always the default process for finding a partner. And compared to traditions outside of it, it's comparatively much looser, in a certain sense, less reliable. Now, when people are coming out of a lot of restriction, I'm sure dating gives a lot of liberating freedom to choose. And especially if people came from cultures where, if your family set you up with somebody, there really wasn't the option to back out. Because sometimes in cultures that do have courtship, the courtship was like a one-way, it was like an elevator, like that you've got to go to the top floor. And once you're on it, and you couldn't back out. So that is not great. But war, let's talk about it. So dating became a thing that was way more popular after World War I. Why do you think that is? The draft. So during World War I, where we're already in American culture, which is kind of a new culture, it's got a lot going for itself. I'm not going to get into the, American politics, but, this is the era. But there's a draft, and all of the men who were going to be around that marrying age are now off to war. They're out of the country, and they're out of commission for courting and marrying, which would have been happening in the community. Oh, my, two women who know each other. Oh, my nephew is this age, and your niece is this age, and, let's hook them up, get together, whatever. And when that happened, it created a shortage of eligible bachelors. And this drastically skewed the way that people pursued looking for a partner. Because now women, and also this is a weird time, right? Like politically and economically for the United States. And something very similar happened over in the UK, that happened in Britain as well. But now you had young women who had much poorer chances of finding a good husband. And this is back in a time where you really had to have a husband. You had to marry. It was very frowned upon to remain single. And luckily we do not live in those times right now. And that's going to matter later. I'll get into it. But created a shortage of men. And now women were competing for men, which is pretty, I'm not trying to get bioessential here, but it's pretty unnatural. And that created this big shift in what people were willing to go through, what people were willing to do in the courtship period. I'm sure there were also a lot more people due to the pressures afoot that were just like not even worried about courtship so much as the thrill of, kissing and having sex and whatever. So what would have happened is women would take suitors, and the suitors, there was no I'm going to go steady with you. Like just because you were seeing somebody you didn't mean you didn't see anybody else. Because what's happening at that time is this woman is an eligible bachelorette, and whoever wants to present themselves, if she's accepting them, well, okay, it's kind of like may the best man win. But when there aren't any men, then it's okay, well, he's decided to go out with me, so let's go steady. And this is where people started to go steady. That's where you started to date, what do they call it, sequentially, basically. But it was with the hopes that this partnership would end up as a marriage. But there was more of an expectation for the woman to kind of prove that she could be a good wife. And this is where we are at in dating. We are still dating in a wartime pattern. Now, almost, a century later. We are still dating in a wartime pattern the better part of a century later. And it is because of this that dating has, for the people who are dating, not the people who are just like, I'm kind of hanging out and just seeing who I can hook up with, but the people who are dating, it's become this thing where the partners, and most especially the women or the femmes in the relationship, role play what it would be like if you married them. So, you're providing care and service and intimacy and sexual openness and all this kind of stuff. It's almost like there's nothing behind. There's very little incentive to go all the way. There's less, I guess. So it's basically role-playing marriage without any actual guarantee that there is going to be this mutual agreement of marriage or even serious commitment. So this is where a lot of people are really burned through dating, because they'll be dating somebody for half a year, 3 years more, and then go like, hey, are we ever going to get married? And, the guy usually is like, oh, I don't know. I mean, I've never really, I don't know. And it's just like, what did you think this is? And it's consuming somebody's time. People are dedicating time into these relationships and building attachments and doing for each other, and maybe one person is kind of doing a little more, but one of the people, maybe more than the other, was thinking that they were kind of doing that towards building towards showing their stability and their worth as a spouse, not a girlfriend or boyfriend, where the other person was just kind of going along with it because we've normalized this playing house without actually being in a committed relationship. So, like I said, this is where a lot of people are getting burned on dating, and that's really hard, because the more they have these bad experiences, the harder it is for them to show up with an open heart in the next one, because they've been hurt by so many people, or they've been disappointed by so many people. They're out here getting traumatized and having to, it's almost like a blood sport where they are, dating, and then they have a really rough breakup, or they have to leave this person, or they get their heart broken and they have to kind of go off the playing field, heal themselves. And again, because they feel like partnership is an important goal in their life, they go back into it. And my argument is, stop going on the playing field. Stop playing games. And you've got dating coaches and here's how to get a man, here's how to get a girl, and telling you what to say. And it's all this inauthentic stuff because it's like a game. And it's like you don't win somebody. But I want to go off on a tangent. I don't want to do that. So let's get into courtship. Remember when I said that friendship has to be the foundation of your marriage. It has to be a foundation of your partnership. And also I mentioned that we do not live in a time where you have to get married. You do not have to get married. No matter what anybody says, you don't have to get married. You also don't need to rush to get married. It doesn't matter if you're in your 30s or 40s or 50s or 60s even. It doesn't matter. People are getting married and having babies and all kinds of stuff way outside of the old narratives of the timeline in which you have to do things. These are very important because as we move forward and I talk about courting, completely different way of pursuing partnership, and it's much more patient. So what is courtship? Let me just say that one of the reasons I wanted to do this talk is to talk about courtship outside of the church. Because when you look up courtship or courtship versus dating, you're going to get a lot of resources that are coming from the Christian church. I am not particularly fond of the Christian church, nor do I think they need to be the only space that is promoting courtship. I think that courtship needs to be a norm. It used to be a norm, and we came from many different places here in the U.S., and if you're listening in, just any of these westernized countries, and we lost a lot of our traditions, and I think that courtship is a step towards reclaiming a more stable way of seeking partnership that we lost when we, like we said, went into this very I don't want to use the word liberal because it kind of gets used the wrong way, but it is very liberal, like do what you want, low responsibility, yet with this high expectation of output way of pursuing marriage through dating. So courtship is basically when you and another person intentionally, with the mutual intention, this is a spoken mutual intention. This is not just rolling along and seeing what happens. It is with a spoken mutual intention to build a conscious, intimate friendship with somebody with the goal of marrying them. That's the goal. Your goal is marriage. So courtship is, there are some people who kind of have a higher standard in their dating, and I would argue that those people are courting. So if you ever see people or dating coaches or whatever, and they say, like when I'm dating somebody, I'm not going to have sex with you until, maybe even never, not until they get an engagement ring or whatever. They have like some bar set. I'm not having sex with you. We're not making out on the first few dates. We're not doing this. We're not doing that. I really need to get to know you. Whereas for a lot of people, it's more like until you get comfortable enough with them, and then things just kind of, ease into full intimacy, but there's never really a talk about money, about marriage, about kids. Like they don't want to do that. It almost like scares off the other person, or it feels like moving too fast. Courtship, if you're courting somebody, you're going to start that framework up front. You're going to say, this is why I'm spending time with you. I am looking for a long-term partnership. Now, you don't necessarily need to say, this is the man or woman I'm looking for. I would argue that you almost never want to tell another person exactly who you're looking for two reasons. And I would say that this is also why I think that there is an inherent flaw with dating apps. So the reason that you don't want to tell somebody who you're looking for right off the rip, and this goes into, like I said, inherent flaw with dating apps, is that, one, you're going to give them a roadmap into who to pretend to be in order to get closer to you. And even if this person is not a manipulator, they're not a liar, you've subconsciously set up this framework. Because if they came to you on a date, they're also looking for you to be that person. They also don't want to keep dating, right? And so even if they're not going to manipulate you, even if they're not the kind of person like, oh, they said they want this and they want that, so this is who I'll pretend to be. Again, you've given them this subconscious framework of who you really would like them to be. And if they are not that, maybe you wouldn't like them so much. So don't tell them that. The second reason is you may be surprised. Sometimes we have this idea of a person, and I'm not saying don't know exactly what you want. As a manifesting, assistant, I will never say that. But I think that we need to leave room for people to just be themselves and see how that person can show up. And because you may find somebody who shows up and the way they are tells you that, oh my God, this is what I wanted. I didn't know that that's what I wanted. So they might not be just like the dating profile that you wrote up. And a lot of times that dating profile, this ideal man, woman, or person that you had listed down is actually a result of just how you've been socially programmed. I mean, I know one thing that I constantly hear women say, oh, I want him to be 6 foot tall. Girl, does that matter? So the right man for you may not be 6 foot tall. You know, it's little things like that. Or you want somebody who was an engineer because he's going to be super smart. He may be super smart some other way and he's not an engineer. We don't know that, right? So don't get too far into that. Don't tell them who to be. And like I said, touching on the dating app thing, dating apps, I found out recently that over 40% of the people who are on dating apps are currently in a relationship. Now, doesn't that sound like a great way to end up going on a date with somebody who is not necessarily, they're already one foot in and 1 foot out, or running into some drama, running into some heartbreak and running into some disappointment. So this is my personal feeling, I would never, ever in my life look for a date on a dating app. Because just like I just said, because you're both on the dating app, you're looking for a partner. Now, I obviously don't think it's wrong to be looking for a partner, but I think that it's wrong to search. I think that it's wrong to search too much for a partner, because only the loveless seek love, and those who have not love do not find it. You really have to come from a kind of a self-love in order to really be able to find the love that you want to mirror or have mirrored in your life. And when you're on a dating app, both of those people want to stop dating. Both of those people are tired of not being selected. And you're in a state of mind where you're going to overlook red flags because you so desperately want this person to be the one. Which is why how you get weeks, months in, realizing, oh God, no, I knew better, but I just really wanted I wanted it to work out, right? Don't go on a dating app. Court. So the other thing is, remember when I was saying that there's all these people in the dating pool, some of them are just there to have fun and splash around, and then some of those people are training. Some of those people, or who want to just have a nice time and do laps. There's all these different purposes in the dating pool, right? When you are courting, you will weed out the people who are just dating. So what I mean by that is if you're meeting somebody and they said, oh, okay, I like you, let's get to know each other, let's go to dinner or whatever. When you start telling them, let's say you have a goal and like I said, you want a commitment, whether it's the ring or whether you want to be with at this stage a relationship with a person where you both are consistently talking about marriage, about household economy, about children if that's something that you want in your future, about you know each other's families. You may say that is my bar for sexual intimacy. I'm not going to be sexually intimate with you until we get to that point. Or you may just say like, I'm courting, I'm looking to court. I'm not into having premarital sex. You may say something like that, right? The moment you say something like that, you're going to weed out the person who was like, that's the deal breaker for me. And think about it this way. That may seem like, oh, well, now I'm going to have fewer suitors. But like I said, those suitors that was only happening because of the pressure put on women. Basically, I'm going to call it like it is. Pressure to put for women to have sex with men who they were not committed to, who they didn't 100% feel close and safe with before these men had actually shown themselves and proven themselves worthy of that because of the draft back in World War I. This is a scarcity mindset, like I said, and it incentivized women going like, oh no, I'll give you this to stay around, right? We're not doing that. We don't need to be in that stage right now or ever. So you may quote unquote feel like you're losing suitors, but you're not losing anybody but somebody who's going to waste your time. Because I will tell you that the people who are going to be turned away by you saying that you're courting are the people who were going to waste your time, and the people who you want, the person that you want that long committed relationship with, when they hear you say, I'm courting, they're going to go, this is exactly what I wanted. Because to them, this process taking much longer to get to sex or get to intimacy or to get to whatever is nothing compared to making sure that the person they're going to spend the next few decades of their life with is the right one. It's a question of investment. That person who's mature enough to think about the long-term investment, like I said, they are not bothered at all by how much longer it's going to take to get into your bed or to get you in the bed with them. They're not bothered by that because they're looking for something else. If they're at that point in their life, they know that the physical, that's great, that's icing on the cake, that maybe, something that they value in their relationship. I'm pro that. I think that's a great way to stay close and to feel satisfied with each other. But that can't be the thing. You've got to understand how this person moves. You've got to understand, what is their faith like? What is their spirituality like? What are their guiding values? Are our values aligned? Are our life goals aligned? How is this person in different seasons of the year? How is this person in different seasons of abundance? What are they like when money is tight? What are they like when they have a lot of money? What are they, you know what I mean? There's a lot of things you need to figure out about somebody, because when you live with them and when you are married to them, that's going to matter a lot. It's going to be everything. And you're going to be spending the most time with them. Now, you should still have your friends and your family relationships and events and things you do separately. But the fact of the matter is, when you get married to somebody, you spend most of your time with them, in most situations. So you taking a year or so, or 8 months or whatever it is, even a few years, to court each other properly is not going to matter. Believe me. And when you see them sticking around throughout this process and you really get a sense of who they are, that is going to give you so much confidence and so much trust. So let me see if there was anything else. I don't ever script these, but this one has a lot of key points and I just want to make sure that I don't miss something. So remember when I was saying that there's friendship, there's the aspect of, you need to build a friendship with somebody, and you also need to remember that you do not need to rush to get married. You're not running out of time. The reason I said that is because courtship doesn't work unless you're fine by yourself. So one of the things that I noticed, again, when I was looking at all these different people talking about their experiences with dating and the conversations and comments that were happening around that, is a lot of people who were so burned by the whole thing that they were kind of sitting it out. They're like, I'm giving it a break. I don't even know if I can do it anymore. I'm just going to be single. And I felt kind of sad for them, because these are people who, there's a difference between being single because you just love being single and you have no need for partnership, which is perfectly fine, and being single because you can't find a good partner. That's different. And I wanted those people to know that, yes, take some time for yourself, but don't give up on finding a partner just because dating doesn't work. Because again, like I'm saying, it's not that there are no partners, it's that you're trying to look for them in the wrong place. The dating pool is not a fertile place for the people who are actually looking for mature long-term relationships. But the good thing that they were kind of ending up doing, even though that's not what they wanted, was they were just stopping dating. They were stopping seeking love, and they were going to spend time being perfectly okay being single. I think this is another key aspect of courtship. You're not going to rush, because you're not rushing towards intimacy. You're not rushing towards any sense of completion in another person. You are perfectly fine sitting and waiting. And especially if you're a feminine person, you need to be perfectly fine sitting and waiting. Because the masculine person energetically wants to kind of show up and show out for you. But when you're chasing them, you're going to be out of your energy. And what you're also going to do is knock them off of their, how to say this? Okay, so the person who wants to show you who they are, like both of the people who are courting, they want to show each other who they are. But the feminine person is going to do that by response, usually. And the masculine person is going to do that by initiating things. Not every time. This is an energetic thing, okay? So they're planning ahead. Let me put it that way. The masculine person is planning ahead, not hoping ahead. They're planning ahead. And I've heard this from different people whose words I value to different degrees, but I do think that it's fairly true. That again, the masculine person, so we're generally talking about men, but not always, whoever is just more masculine. The masculine person wants to make sure that they're ready to bring what they have to this person who they want to prove themselves to. They do like to prove themselves. And what they want in turn is somebody who is not going to just immediately say, okay, yes, you're here, yes. Because how do they know your judgment? You didn't even make them do anything, really. But like I said, they are in their head thinking about the goals that they want to hit and the things that they want to show you about themselves, the things that they want to achieve in order to kind of share that with the relationship. When you chase them, imagine that they're like behind the curtain trying to work on something. When you chase them, you barge in on what they are building and ruin the surprise. They want to come to you and be like, ta-da! And you chase them, you interrupt their process. And they also don't want you to see them unready. They don't want you to try to initiate a certain level or a certain whatever when they're not ready, because then it's like you created a situation for them to fail. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So you, if you're the feminine person, you need to be receptive and patient. And when I say patient, I don't mean like don't list your boundaries, don't tell them what you want, don't tell them what you want. They want that too, and you should want that. It's perfectly fine to tell them what I want. But when I say being patient, I mean in all relationships, it is best not to press people, but to see what they do of their own will. That will actually show you the nature of their true character. So sit back, watch. And because you are not rushing towards a relationship because you're perfectly content being single, they are competing with your peace. When you are at peace in yourself. And this is good for every partner. I'm not saying, you know what I mean? Like, this is not just for the women, just for the guys. This is for every person. You need to stay in your peace, and you need to have self-love and peace in and of yourself. So that means that when you go and you start interacting with another person to try to bring them into your life and to bring your lives together, you need to have a good baseline of peace and self-love. Then you will know if the relationship is not good for you, because it's going to move you away from that peace and self-love. If you have your own peace and self-love and somebody else is a good fit for you, they're not going to move you out of that. But when you don't have that, you're going to start chasing it in the relationship. And now you're moved out of your center. You don't even have your own center. You'll start rushing stuff or overlooking red flags or whatever. So I'm not really going to get into like the steps of courtship. I hope that I've given you a decent overview. It's basically, like I said, it's like, when you're dating somebody, you're not dating, oh, let's just see how it goes, right? You hear that, let's just see how it goes. Or I don't want to say too much on the first date, that kind of thing. Sure, maybe you want to have like a really brief, really light little affair to see if, hey, do I actually like being in this person's space enough to start saying this courtship stuff to them? But I mean, if you know that you like them, if they seem like, they seem very nice to be around, then when you actually have your first date or whatever it is, when you're courting, you will say this. It's very upfront. You're very upfront about the process. Like I said before, I want to repeat this. It is a mutually intentional process of building an intimate friendship as a foundation on which to build a long-term commitment, a partnership, a marriage. So you're generally not just kind of going along, or you're not leading with passion either, like, oh, we're attracted to each other, we feel safe with each other, let's have sex. Because that can speed things up in one way before you've actually figured out a lot of other important things about the person. So it's best not to do that. And again, this is going to be something that you're going to be less likely to fall for if you are feeling very comfortable in yourself. You're not feeling like you need to rush. You're not feeling like but if I don't say yes, they'll leave, right? That is a thing that's got normalized in dating. Again, it's a wartime scarcity mindset thing. You need to be comfortable just saying, no, I want to wait. Because like I said, the person who is thinking that you might be the person that they spend the next 30, 40 years with, if you're lucky, waiting is not, this is a very small investment. This is a very small wait compared to the long term. One last thing that I heard from a I think he was like an intimacy coach or like a marriage coach. And I just was like, this is the greatest tip. He's also somebody who teaches courtship versus dating, but he had this wonderful statement about the role of dating, because he says the problem with our society now is that this is kind of like what I was saying before, that dating is almost like role playing being in a committed partnership before you know that you're actually going to commit to each other. And so you do all the fun stuff and you go out with each other and you do this gift giving and the intimacy and all this kind of stuff, but you don't even know if you're going to be with this person long term. And instead, you should court. But what he said is, after you marry or after you have gotten into your committed partnership, that is when you date each other. Never stop dating each other, because that's just going out on dates consistently and having time outside of your busy lives, making time for each other, having time to get to know each other, spending time with each other, eye to eye, skin to skin, having shared experiences, having little adventures together, taking time to enjoy each other's interests and hobbies. You should date after the relationship has commenced in that way. And that way your relationship doesn't go stale. So it's basically, don't date people before you really know that they're the one, because you're putting too much into it and it's going too fast. Court them. But then once you court them and you've decided to, marry them or whatever, then you date them, and don't ever stop dating them. Keep dating them, but save the dating until after the commitment. So I hope that I hope that's been informative. And if not, entertaining, maybe even a little relaxing. If you have any questions, if there's anything that you'd like me to expand on, you can also leave that in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. I'll close out with saying when I was kind of looking around at the whole dating thing, I saw a lot of people, because I would comment, on people complaining. I said, well, I think that maybe we could talk about no longer dating and starting to courtship. You don't have to give up hope on seeing a partner, but I think that it's a time that we should start courting and not date anymore. And I would see people, saying, oh yeah, that happened. Me and my husband, we courted for however long and we have a great relationship and I love it. So, look around and see if maybe that's a better option for you. If you're looking for a partnership, but you're looking for a partnership and not just like an experience, or not just fun and not just the entertainment of having another person around, you're actually looking for a partner. You will weed out a lot of people by saying that you're only courting. So I want to shout out my wonderful patrons, over on Patreon, patreon.com/thatwitch, WHICH, because they make all of this possible. I could not do it without them. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And if you're seeing this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you'd like to hear more of my thoughts and opinions on different things, the everyday, the mundane, and the spiritual, I am over on Instagram and on TikTok as I am that witch, WHICH, same name on both platforms. Peace.